What if the real problem was never your income, not your job, not your effort, not even your lack of money? Because millions of people today are doing everything they were told to do. They work more hours, they try to save, they avoid unnecessary spending, and still, they feel stuck. This isn't just a feeling, it's backed by what's happening in the global economy right now. According to data from institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, global growth is still positive in 2026. But it's weaker than it used to be. That means opportunities are growing, but at a slower pace. At the same time, inflation hasn't disappeared. Yes, it's lower than the peak years, but prices didn't go back down. They stayed high. Food, rent, energy, transportation. Everything is more expensive than it was just a few years ago. And this is the key detail most people miss. Even when inflation falls, your cost of living doesn't. Now add wages into the equation. In many countries, wage growth has not kept up with long-term price increases. So even if you earn more money today, your purchasing power doesn't increase the same way. Which leads to a simple but uncomfortable truth. You're not moving forward. You're maintaining your position. And that's where the biggest financial lie starts to break. Because most people were taught a very simple idea. Work hard, save money, and over time, you'll build wealth. But that idea was built in a completely different environment. A time when housing was cheaper, debt was easier to manage, and economic growth was stronger. Today, that environment has changed. Let's talk about interest rates. For years, the global economy depended on cheap money. Low interest rates made borrowing easy. Governments borrowed, companies expanded, people took on mortgages and loans. But in 2026, interest rates are still relatively high compared to the last decade. Central banks raise them to fight inflation, and they are not rushing to bring them down. Why? Because inflation can come back. But high interest rates come with consequences. They make borrowing more expensive. Mortgages become heavier. Credit becomes tighter. Business investment slows down. And when borrowing slows down, the entire economy slows down. Now combine that with something even bigger, debt. Globally, debt levels are at historic highs. Governments, corporations, and households are all carrying massive amounts of it. When interest rates rise, that debt becomes harder to manage. And when debt becomes harder to manage, financial pressure increases. This is why, even in economies that are technically growing, people feel like they're falling behind. Because growth doesn't always mean improvement in real life. Now add global uncertainty. Conflicts, energy price fluctuations, supply chain disruptions. All of these affect the cost of living. When oil prices rise, transportation becomes more expensive. When transportation becomes more expensive, production costs go up. And when production costs go up, prices increase again. So even when things look stable on the surface, pressure continues to build underneath. And this is where the real problem becomes clear. The system has changed, but the advice most people follow has not. Work harder doesn't fix structural pressure. Earn more doesn't solve rising costs by itself. Save more becomes harder when everything is expensive. So the issue is not just money, it's understanding. Because in a system like this, awareness becomes more valuable than effort alone. You need to understand how inflation affects your real income. You need to understand how interest rates change opportunities. You need to understand when the system is working for you and when it's working against you. That's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who adapt. And because if you don't understand the system, you keep chasing a solution that no longer works the same way. And that's the biggest financial lie, that more money alone will solve everything. In reality, without the right perspective, you can keep earning more and still feel like you're losing ground. So no, you don't just need more money. You need clarity. You need awareness. You need to see the system for what it really is. Because once you do, you stop playing the game blindly. And that's when things actually start to change.